We all have stories, though we may not all see it as such. Our life journey is a story. Our experiences are stories. The memories we create from those experiences are stories. There are novels, essays, movies, music, poem, and all kinds of creative and artistic expressions that have been inspired by true life stories. And we call them inspired by true life stories because the people whose stories are being told have agreed for that story to be shared. People get to see, they hear, they read, they listen to those stories because those whose stories are being told decided to share their story. So if you choose not to share your story, people may be missing out on vital life lessons that your story should have taught. Now, I know most people don't see their stories as worth telling. I've been there before, so I know what it's like. You know, you're asking yourself, who am I? Who knows me? Who cares? Why should anyone be interested in my story anyway? I'm just a regular guy or a girl in my own little corner of the world trying to survive. So what have I got to share? What's my story? Why would anyone want to listen? And I can relate with that. But guess what? The situation you are in, what you've lived through, has taught you some lessons. And there is something in that lesson that somebody else can benefit from. So if you choose not to share that story, somebody is missing out on something. The world loves rags to riches stories. You know when they say rags to riches, that's what grabs people's attention. You know, stories like, I grew up without a shoe. I didn't have shoes until I was 20. I had to sell to see myself through school. I had to work on the farm in the morning, sell, hawk something in the afternoon, and then go to school later. And that's how I managed to make it to where I am today. People love those kinds of stories because it's got emotion in it. And it arouses the kind of emotion that people want to get. But what if your story is not a rags to riches story? What if what you have right now is just rags and no riches yet? What do I mean? What you have now is still rags because you don't have the riches yet. You're still on your way to the riches. So you think your story is not complete. Your story is not mature enough to share. Now, that is one side. There are people who do not have rags. They've never had rags because they were born into money, born into wealth. They've never known what it is to be poor. What about them? Do you want to tell me they don't have stories? Of course they do. And there are people in between. They weren't born into poverty, but they weren't born into wealth as well. Just somewhere in between. So whether you're poor, you're average, or you're wealthy, we all have stories. And some people, sometime, someday, will benefit from that story. Now here is what you need to be very, very careful about. Because you hear a lot of people who tell their stories supposedly, but the stories are fiction, the stories are fabricated. And you see the danger in that. If you don't keep your story authentic, if you don't keep it factual, somebody somewhere knows your story. There are people who grew up with you. There are people who went to the same schools with you. There are people who have worked in places where you have. There are people who know your parents. They will call you out as a liar. And that will be a thorough mess. So please, tell your stories if you feel you have something to share. Whenever you're ready, find that voice from within you and tell your story. But keep it authentic. Keep it truthful. Regardless of how it comes, people just want the truth all the time, trust me. Now, imagine a situation where somebody is going through a very serious health situation and they choose to share their story with the world. There are people now who have blogs, they've got Facebook pages where they tell their stories, they share their day-to-day experiences in terms of how they're coping with their health condition. Now, they tell their story and then you start to hear people coming on responding, making comments, making connections. Before you know what is happening, a community is built. And when you hear somebody else's story that is like your story, you feel better, because then you know I'm not the only one in this situation. So you find a kindred spirit, you find a community, you find help, you find support. Because when that community is built, my experience will help you, because what you're going through, I've been through it before. And what you have passed through, I may just about be getting into it. So when I escalate what I'm thinking or what I'm going through, people say, okay, I know what to do. I've done it before. This is what I did that worked. This is what I did that got me through. And that is why we all need to be generous and not stingy with our stories. So, what's your story? What's your story? It doesn't have to be rags to riches. It doesn't have to be something that is so outlandish. But tell it. Be truthful. Be authentic. Even if it's one person that comes in contact with your story and their life is changed, you've made a difference. It may be one person. That one person will now go into the world and make a difference in the lives of tens of thousands of people. But it started with your story. So please, go on. Tell your story. Rule your world with good thoughts and brilliant ideas.